What is up, guys? I'm Neal Jolly and welcome inside Jolly Studios, where we talk about everything cameras to sneakers. And today we're talking cameras and a question that I get so often, which is, what camera should I buy? This is a question that I wanted to address as part of the first camera video on this channel, given that this is a question I get often, like I said, and also because one, I hope this addresses a need for you, and secondly, for those of you curious, me being able to show you guys the camera gear that I'm using today, as well as me being able to show you guys the equipment that I once started with and how I slowly built myself up to the point that I'm at today. And so this is actually going to be a two-part video, with today's video addressing the question of the video and me hopefully being able to guide you into what grouping or bracket I feel like you might fall in, whether that's at the entry, advanced, or professional level. And then the second video following up to this video will be dropping next Thursday, where I'll be talking about, spoiler alert, this camera that I'm using right now, a camera that I feel is essential and the best camera for photo and video for creators. And so I do want to preface this conversation with two things. The first being, I don't profess to know it all. I am a self-taught photographer based in Toronto, Canada, and have been doing photography for a number of years, from having been able to work with widely renowned brands around the world to being able to work with artists today. So I'm bringing that perspective to the table of the wealth of experience that I've accumulated, as well as the equipment. And the second thing I wanted to preface is that the cameras I will be talking about today are only the cameras that I own, and those are Canon cameras. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to other cameras or other camera brands. It's just that I'm only speaking from my perspective. When it comes to answering the question of what camera I should buy, I often find myself responding by breaking up that question into two separate segments. The first being, what is your intentionality and purpose behind purchasing that camera? And secondly, what is your budget? These questions aren't proposed in any particular order, but one could argue that budget will likely dictate what camera you end up picking up. But a limited budget does not mean that you are limited in the quantity or quality of cameras. In fact, it's very likely that you can find a camera that far succeeds your needs and fits within your budget at an economical price. And so we're just going to focus on this question within those two segments. And of course, we can always go down the route of discussing spec by spec of what specifically fits your needs, but I do feel like that is an advanced conversation, and we might have some beginners that are watching today or some hobbyists, and so we are going to go the route of just breaking this question down in two segments of what your budget is and also what your need is. So let's start by calling this the entry level, with a budget bracket of $1,000 to $1,500. As far back as 8 years ago, I remember being in college and just wanting a camera that I could just use to shoot everything, to shoot family, to shoot portraits, and hopefully take on some client work. But at the time, I was under the budget of a student budget, and I was looking at a camera at the time, a Canon camera, and ended up picking up the Canon 60D. Unfortunately, I do not have this camera on me in the studio today to give you a hands-on look, but the Canon 60D is actually no longer available for sale. It is discontinued, but Canon since has introduced models like the 70D, the 80D, and as recently the 90D, which are upgrades on that camera and are really great cameras that might suit your need. I remember it coming with a kit lens, an 18 to 135 millimeter, which is wild because you can get everything in that lens from micro to macro, and it kind of being the lens and camera that I needed at the time. It even had a flip out screen so you could vlog. I feel like Canon was almost ahead of the game in terms of the whole vlogging world that we're in right now, with a kind of a hybrid camera with a flip out screen that kind of felt like a digital camera but was actually a DSLR that produced great photo quality. Today, the Canon 80D is a perfect option for this grouping and this budget bracket of $1,000 to $1,500, with this camera falling in at the $1,000 price point. And now we're moving into the advanced level with a budget bracket of $3,000 to $5,000. About a year removed from picking up the 60D, I found myself getting more paid gigs and having to show up on set with a camera that provided more of a professional output. And so I started to look into the Canon 5D Mark III. The Canon 5D Mark III is an excellent camera and was a step up for me from the Canon 60D in overall photo and video capability, and to this day, it's still a camera I throw in my backpack and travel with as my secondary option when it comes to photography. It is lightweight and lighter than the camera I'm going to talk about next, for sure, and so this camera is a must-have for me and is a camera I'm going to be holding on for forever. Today, the Canon 5D Mark III fits right in the budget bracket of the 3,000 to 5,000 at a price point of 4,300 Canadian, with the Canon 5D Mark IV, the update to the 3, or the follow-up, I guess you could say, actually being at a lower price point of 3,300. The specs and overall features of both cameras are comparative, and you can definitely see which one suits your needs better, but either way, both cameras are wonderful options for you to check out and hopefully suit your needs. And now entering the higher end of the advanced bracket, I guess you could call it advanced high. This was around the time I realized that as I wanted to diversify my photography and my videography, that there were specific needs, and with that I needed specific lenses. And so with that also came a price tag. I found myself actually picking up 3 different lenses that suited each particular need, starting with the lens that I'm using right now, the 16 to 35 mm 2.8. This lens was perfect for me at the time with doing interviews and sit-down interview styles without having everybody kind of cram up on the couch to fit in the frame. And it's also one of the better vlogging lenses on DSLR Canons. I found myself often using the 5D Mark IV and turning the camera towards me and realizing that I looked really big in the screen and needed a wider lens. And so at the 16 mm capacity on this lens, you get that nice wide shot and you don't appear overly big in the camera. And then I found myself needing a lens that was more geared towards product-focused photography and videography, and so I ended up picking up the Canon 85mm 1.2. This lens is an absolute beast. It happens to be quite heavy, I'm not gonna lie, but it is a lens that I always throw in my bag when I travel or when I go on set, and it is a lens that I've used as part of music video shoots, product-focused shoots, and just for all of my B-roll, this is my go-to lens. And then finally, I needed a lens that could do it all, a lens I could throw on my camera and trust that it would capture just about everything I needed throughout the day, the micro and the macro, and so I picked up the Canon 24 to 70mm f2.8. And man, this lens is a perfect all-around lens and has been my official go-to. I take this everywhere I go, slap it on the camera, and outside of the 16 to 35 I'm using in studio right now, when I do travel, this is the lens that I leave on my camera throughout the day. It's just the perfect all-around lens. And now moving into the final level that we're going to talk about today, which is the professional level with a budget bracket of about 5,000 to 7,000 Canadian. And so this will be the last bracket that we will touch on, given that there are cameras that are more advanced or at a higher price point for sure that fall outside of this bracket that are industry best, but as it pertains to this video, I do feel like this camera in this bracket might suit your needs. 3 years after picking up the Canon 5D Mark III, and as now a full-blown photographer with my photography and client work picking up, so did my video work and so did my needs for a better video camera. And so I really needed a camera that really did the best of both worlds, photography and videography. Specific to video and advancements in 4K and higher frame rates that became available in DSLR cameras, the Canon 5D Mark III was limited to 1080p and the highest resolution available. And in terms of the frame rate, the highest available was 60 frames per second. And I really wanted a camera that had the capability of 4K, and then when it came to the frame rate, had the availability for me to shoot in that buttery smooth B-roll at 120 frames per second. So with consideration to those specs and the overall need of a camera that did photography and videography exceptionally well, and a growing budget to pick up a camera that suited that need, I ended up picking up the Canon 1DX Mark II. As a full frame camera, all of the lenses that I use on the Canon 5D Mark III and the 60D worked on this 1DX Mark II, so that was an easy transition, and it now is the camera that I use every single day. It is my go-to camera. It is the camera that I've taken on music video shoots, to client branded shoots, to just this YouTube channel right now. I am shooting on this camera in 4K as we speak. As of today, Canon does have an upgrade on the 1DX Mark II. It has the 1DX Mark III, but the Mark III falls outside of our bracket of 5,000 to 7,000 Canadian at a price point of 9,000 Canadian. The 1DX Mark II, however, does fall smack dab right in the middle of the budget of 5,000 to 7,000 at a price point of 6,000 Canadian. And honestly, having a look at the Mark III simply on specs in comparison to the Mark II 1DX, I just have to say that I think that the Canon 1DX Mark II is still an excellent camera. I likely will not make the switch just because this camera does it all for me in photography and videography. It's a camera I can take everywhere with me without having to bring a camera that's specific for photography and a camera specific for videography. This camera really does it all. And so I highly recommend in this bracket the Canon 1DX Mark II. So with that said, there's only one area we haven't touched on. What about digital cameras? And I happen to own a Canon G7X Mark II. And while this camera is an excellent vlogging camera and a camera that you can take on your family vacations to vlog your travels, it is limited in its photo and video capabilities. And yes, digital cameras, much like our cell phones today, can shoot in 4K and have better megapixel capability. 4K, however, is just resolution. And to draw an analogy, a camera at a $10,000 price point that can shoot 4K certainly provides a different image than that of a camera like a digital camera. And while a lot of these digital cameras are advertising for 4K and specific specs that draw you in, there are differences between these cameras specific to the overall software and hardware and build of these cameras, the overall glass used, the lenses on our DSLRs that we're able to use as well, and the overall output in terms of a production is certainly better on a DSLR than you'd find on any digital camera. However, this camera might be the perfect camera for you. It is certainly a very easy camera to use. It is hands-on friendly with a tap to focus. It does photo and video quite well, and like I said, it is a easy camera to throw in your pocket or your purse, your bag, and however you travel and take with you everywhere you go. And so I'd put this camera just slightly below the entry-level grouping. And to answer the question, what camera should I buy? The answer is subjective. It's subjective to your need and your purpose behind the purchase of this camera, as well as your overall budget. And so I hope that this video serves as a guide for you to decipher which category or grouping that you fall into, whether that's the entry level, the advanced, or professional. And if you're interested in checking out any of the cameras that we discussed today, as well as the accompanying lenses that I picked up for my Canon cameras, I've left a direct link in the description box below for you to check them out and potentially pick them up for yourself. But now I'd love to hear from you guys. What camera are you guys currently using and why? Is there a camera on this list that we talked about today that piqued your interest or that you have any questions about? Drop me a comment in the comment section below and I'd love to connect with you guys there. Give this video a like if you enjoyed today's camera talk, and if you really liked it, I hope that you will subscribe to the channel and join the community because we have a lot more camera related content on the way, including next Thursday where we drop part 2 of this video where I talk about the best camera for photos and video for content creators. And if you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you again. I just dropped my first YouTube video only a couple of days ago, and it was a sneaker review of the Jordan 1 Mid Chicago Black Toe, and it just was so encouraging to see all of your feedback and kind words and excitement around camera related content, including today's video. I'm just so excited to bring this content your way and bringing more camera related content to you guys, where I'll be sharing more tips that I've learned in the industry, as well as some tutorials on editing photos, tutorials on editing video, and more camera related content on what I use in terms of my gear today. And with that said, I so appreciate each and every one of you for watching and your time and support of this channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.